The person you loue has been talking to someone secretly. Discover the truth. My beloved child. The person you love has been talking to someone secretly, and what makes this so unsettling is not simply that the conversations happened, it is what they were saying when they believed you would never find out. For several nights, their attention has been somewhere else. A message arrives, they look at the screen, and suddenly their expression changes. Sometimes they answer immediately. Other times, they wait until they are alone. But last night was different. The conversation went on much longer than usual, and at one point, your name appeared. That was when everything shifted. They stopped typing. They stared at the message for several seconds, almost as if the person on the other side had said something they weren't prepared to hear. And then they wrote a response they nearly deleted. Don't skip, because the secret isn't necessarily what you're imagining. The person they've been speaking with knows something about you, something about your connection, and something your person has been struggling to admit even to themselves. At first, these secret conversations weren't supposed to become serious. Your person reached out because they needed someone who wasn't emotionally involved, someone they could speak to without immediately facing the consequences of what they were feeling. They had questions about you. Questions they couldn't bring themselves to ask directly. Why did things between you change? Why does your absence still affect them? And why, after everything that happened, do they still find themselves wondering whether there is unfinished business between you? But the person listening didn't give them the comfortable answers they expected. Instead, they challenged them. They asked one simple question. If this person means nothing to you anymore, why are you still afraid to tell them the truth? Your person had no immediate answer. That silence mattered. Because underneath all the explanations, distance, and carefully controlled emotions, there was one truth they had been avoiding, and the secret conversation was slowly forcing it into the open. Then came the message that changed the entire tone of the night. The person on the other side revealed that they had noticed something your person thought nobody could see. Every major decision they had made recently somehow circled back to you. Even when they tried moving forward, they compared new possibilities to what they once felt with you. Even when they told themselves they were finished, they still wondered what you would think. Your person finally admitted that they hadn't been hiding these conversations because they were building something with someone else. They were hiding them because the conversations were exposing feelings they weren't ready for you to know about. But there is another piece to this. Something they haven't confessed yet. Near the end of last night's exchange, your person asked the stranger a question so specific that it revealed what they may be preparing to do next. The reply came almost immediately, and after reading it, your person opened your conversation, typed a message to you, and hovered over the send button. But what they wrote is where the real truth begins. For several minutes, your person just stared at the message they had written to you, unable to decide whether sending it would finally fix something or destroy the fragile distance between you. The words were simple at first, "There's something I should have told you a long time ago." But then they kept typing. They admitted that the silence between you had never felt as peaceful as they pretended. They admitted there were moments when they almost reached out, only to convince themselves you had already moved on. Then came the sentence they couldn't bring themselves to send, "I was waiting for you to give me a reason to believe I still mattered." Their finger hovered over the screen, but fear won. They erased the message. What they didn't erase, however, was the conversation with the mysterious person who had pushed them this far. And that conversation was about to reveal why they had been so afraid of approaching you directly. The secret person knew more about the situation than you might expect. Not because they were competing for your person's heart, but because your person had been telling them pieces of the story for weeks, carefully at first, then more honestly each night. They described the misunderstanding that created distance. They talked about the things they wished they had said differently. They even admitted that they had judged one of your decisions without knowing what you were dealing with at the time. That's when the other person stopped comforting them and said something that landed hard. Maybe you've spent so much time protecting yourself that you never gave them a chance to explain. Your person went completely still. Suddenly, the story they had repeated to themselves didn't feel as certain anymore. Stay till the end, because what happened next wasn't another emotional confession. It was a discovery. Your person went searching through something they had ignored before, and found a detail that completely challenged what they believed about you. It was an old exchange, something they had once read while angry and interpreted in the worst possible way. This time, they noticed the timing. One message from you had arrived before the argument, not after it as they had remembered. Another sentence they once considered cold suddenly sounded different when read beside what came before it. Piece by piece, your person began realizing that part of the distance between you may have grown from assumptions neither of you ever corrected. They immediately returned to the secret conversation and wrote, "I think I got something wrong." The response came quickly. "Then don't make another decision until you know the whole truth." Your person asked what that meant. For nearly a minute, there was no reply. Then 3 dots appeared. The person finally sent one sentence that made your person sit upright and read it twice. "There's one thing about them you still don't know." And whatever came next was important enough that your person stopped thinking about sending you a message, and decided they needed to find out the truth first. That final sentence refused to leave their mind. Your person immediately asked, "What don't I know?" But instead of answering directly, the mysterious person sent back something unexpected. "Think about the last time they tried to explain themselves. What did you refuse to hear?" Your person froze. A memory surfaced, one they had pushed aside because remembering it meant questioning everything they had believed afterward. There had been a moment when you tried to say more, but emotions were already too high. Your person assumed they understood your intentions before you finished explaining them. Now, for the first time, they wondered whether they had walked away from an answer they desperately needed. They scrolled further through old messages, searching for anything they had overlooked. Then they found one unfinished exchange. Your final words that day hadn't been an accusation. They had been an attempt to tell them something. And suddenly, the secret conversations weren't about hiding another relationship at all. They were about uncovering what had actually happened between you. Your person returned to the mysterious conversation with a completely different energy. "Tell me what you know," they wrote. This time, the answer came slowly. The other person explained that they couldn't give your person every detail because some truths had to come directly from you. But they could say this: your silence had been misunderstood. What your person interpreted as indifference may have been hesitation. What they saw as you closing the door may have been you waiting to see whether they would finally meet you halfway. That possibility shook them because it meant both of you could have spent all this time reacting to the same fear from opposite sides. Your person admitted something they hadn't said in any previous conversation. I thought I was protecting myself from being rejected. The response was immediate. And what if they were doing exactly the same thing? Don't skip, because that question changed what your person decided to do next. They stopped looking backward for evidence and started thinking about what would happen if they finally spoke to you without hiding behind pride. But before they could reach out, another message arrived, and this one made everything more complicated. The mysterious person wrote, "Before you contact them, there's something else you need to understand about why they pulled away." Your person asked for an explanation, but the reply didn't come immediately. Minutes passed. Then the screen lit up again. They learned something about you before you ever realized they knew. Your person read the sentence twice, confused. What could you possibly have discovered that changed the way you treated them? Suddenly, they remembered a specific moment when your behavior had shifted. You became quieter, more careful. You stopped asking certain questions. At the time, they assumed you were losing interest. Now they weren't so sure. Your person typed, "What did they find out?" The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, the mysterious person answered with 5 words that changed the direction of everything: "Ask yourself what you hid." Those 5 words hit harder than any accusation could have. Your person immediately knew there was something in their past they had never fully explained to you, not because they wanted to deceive you, but because they were terrified of how you might see them afterward. It was a decision they had made before the distance between you began, something they convinced themselves was irrelevant because it had happened during a confusing period in their life. But now the timing suddenly made sense. Your behavior had changed shortly after that secret became harder to hide. You had stopped pushing for answers. You had become unusually careful around certain subjects. Your person had mistaken that restraint for fading feelings, when perhaps you were quietly waiting for them to tell you the truth themselves. They returned to the mysterious conversation and typed, "Do they already know?" The answer came back, "They know enough to realize you weren't completely honest. What they don't know is why." That distinction changed everything. Your person wasn't afraid because the hidden truth was unforgivable. They were afraid because explaining it meant admitting how insecure they had been. During the period when your connection felt uncertain, they had quietly sought advice from someone connected to their past. Nothing romantic happened, but they deliberately kept those conversations from you because they feared you would misunderstand them. And ironically, hiding something harmless made it look far worse than it actually was. The mysterious person pointed this out without softening it. You protected yourself from one uncomfortable conversation and created months of uncertainty instead. Your person couldn't argue. They finally understood why you may have stepped back without confronting them. Maybe you weren't trying to punish them. Maybe you had seen enough to become cautious, but not enough to understand the full story. And now your person faced a painful choice: continue protecting their image, or risk telling you everything and letting you decide what it meant. They opened your conversation again. This time, they didn't type an emotional confession. They wrote one honest sentence: I think you discovered something about me, and I should have explained it before you ever had to wonder." They stared at those words, breathing slowly, almost ready to send them. Then another notification appeared from the person they'd been secretly talking to. "Wait. Before you send anything, there's one detail you need to know." Your person stopped. The next message arrived seconds later. What they discovered wasn't an accident. Suddenly, the entire situation shifted. Someone had apparently wanted you to see enough of the hidden conversations to become suspicious, but not enough to understand what they actually meant. Your person immediately asked the question you would have asked too: who? There was a long silence. Then a name appeared on the screen. And the moment your person saw it, they realized this wasn't a stranger interfering from the outside. It was someone who had been much closer to your story than either of you suspected. Your person recognized the name instantly, and for a moment, everything around them seemed to disappear. This was someone they had trusted enough to speak around without carefully choosing every word. Someone who knew when things between you were becoming uncertain. More importantly, this person had witnessed those old conversations and understood exactly how easily they could be misunderstood without context. Your person quickly typed, "Why would they want this?" The answer was unsettling, because they thought keeping you apart would protect someone. Not destroy you. Not steal your person away. Protect someone. That distinction opened an entirely new mystery. Your person began remembering small moments that once seemed harmless, questions about you, warnings disguised as concern, subtle suggestions that maybe the connection had become too complicated. Suddenly, those moments looked different. Someone had been quietly influencing how your person interpreted you while allowing you to see fragments that made your person appear dishonest. But there was still something missing. If this person wanted distance between you, what exactly were they protecting? Your person pushed for an answer, and the mysterious contact finally revealed what they had been reluctant to say. The interference began after someone close to the situation learned your person was considering making a serious choice involving you. It wasn't a casual decision. Your person had apparently been preparing to change something important in their life so they could approach you without unfinished business hanging over them. They hadn't told you because they wanted to make the change first and explain afterward. But somebody found out before they could follow through. That person became convinced your connection would create consequences they couldn't control, so instead of confronting either of you directly, they allowed suspicion to grow between you. Your person read the explanation in disbelief. Months of silence suddenly looked less like two people losing interest and more like two people being pushed toward opposite conclusions. Then your person asked the question that had been building from the beginning: "Why are you telling me this now?" The mysterious contact didn't answer immediately. When the response finally arrived, it was only one sentence: "Because the person who interfered is about to speak to them again." Your person sat forward. Again? That meant whoever had influenced the situation before might already have contacted you once without your person knowing. They demanded to know what had been said, but the mysterious contact replied, "I don't know the exact words. I only know they're afraid the truth is coming out." Then another message appeared, "And there's something else. You weren't the only one keeping a conversation secret." Your person stared at the screen. Until that moment, they believed they were the one carrying the hidden side of this story. Now they realized you may have spoken privately to someone too. And whoever you talked to apparently told you something about your person that changed everything. Your person felt their stomach tighten as that realization settled in. If you had been speaking privately to someone too, then perhaps your distance had never been about losing feelings at all. Maybe you had been trying to understand a story that never quite added up. They asked the mysterious contact, who did they talk to? The response came carefully, someone who believed they were warning them about you. That word, warning, changed the entire atmosphere. Your person immediately remembered how differently you had behaved after one particular day. Before it, you were open, curious, willing to believe there was still something worth protecting between you. Afterward, you became guarded. You stopped asking where things were going. You seemed to expect disappointment before it happened. Your person had assumed you were pulling away. Now they wondered whether somebody had deliberately given you a reason to doubt them. The mysterious contact finally explained what you had apparently been told. Someone had suggested that your person was keeping you close emotionally while secretly planning a future that didn't include you. It sounded convincing because fragments of real information had been mixed with assumptions. Yes, your person had been making private plans. Yes, they had spoken to someone from their past. Yes, they had hidden certain conversations. But the conclusion you were given was backwards. Those plans weren't about leaving you behind. Your person had been trying to close an old chapter before approaching you with something real. Suddenly, they understood the cruel irony. The very steps they took because they cared about what happened between you had been presented as evidence that they didn't care at all. And because neither of you confronted the other directly, the misunderstanding had been allowed to breathe until silence became easier than asking the question both of you feared. Your person couldn't tolerate another minute of guessing. They returned to the unsent message and began rewriting it from the beginning. No excuses. No carefully polished explanation. Just the truth. I don't know what you've been told about me, but I think we both deserve to hear the truth from each other. This time, they didn't erase it. Their finger moved toward send, then the mysterious contact sent one final warning. Before you do that, check what happened the night everything changed. Your person paused. There was only one night they could mean. The night you suddenly stopped responding the same way. Your person searched through old messages, comparing times and dates, until they noticed something they had somehow missed for months. A message had been sent from their account during a period when they weren't even holding their phone. It was short, cold, and written in a way your person would never speak to you. That was when the real question finally surfaced. If your person didn't send the message that pushed you away, who did? Your person stared at that old message until the timestamp became impossible to ignore. They remembered exactly where they had been that night, and more importantly, they remembered who had briefly been close enough to their phone to send something without raising suspicion. Suddenly, the name revealed earlier made terrifying sense. The message wasn't dramatic. That was precisely why it had worked. It sounded believable enough to resemble your person's voice, but distant enough to make you believe their feelings had changed. Your person read it again and noticed one tiny detail, a phrase they never used, but the suspected person used constantly. That was the confirmation they needed. Someone hadn't merely allowed a misunderstanding to happen. They had quietly helped create it. And now your person understood why you became guarded almost overnight. You weren't responding to what your person actually felt. You were responding to words they had never written. Everything moved quickly after that. Your person saved the old exchange, then returned to the mysterious contact and asked W.